all from positions that traditions of men had put them under and elevated them to all of them to places of great honor. And tonight I'm going to hit two more women in the Word, and this is going to be the last, I'm going to hit a few more individual women briefly next week in context of women in ministry in the New Testament. And then we're going to start hitting those fun verses, those really fun, controversial verses that everybody just loves to tear each other up on. So I'm going to, everybody's got an interpretation of those verses based on their own study, some of it based on what other people have told them all their lives, and they haven't done the digging. And I was taught certain things, too, when I was in Bible college, that this was this, this was that. I came out of a Bible school tradition, charismatic, mind you, spirit-filled, but they would not ordain women. But they would take single women and send them to Timbuktu, Mongolia, and say, go thou and plant churches, raise up disciples, plant Bible schools, do the work of the ministry. So you, of course, see the obvious double standard that was going on in that tradition that I came out of. So when we get to this part starting next week, I went back and did some deep digging into cultural backgrounds of the times. And I think when we get to those, a whole lot of light is going to be shed on those verses in context of culture, just as we're looking at how Jesus treated women in context of the culture of his time that had been in place by then for hundreds of years, and how radical the Son of God was while he was walking in his flesh on earth in his treatment of women. And tonight I want to hit two more, and I want to stir up some discussion. So don't be afraid to talk. We're going to talk about two women, two healings. Both of these women broken and isolated, and then Jesus encountered them. One was a physical healing, one was a mental healing. And I want to hit both of these women tonight. The first one I want to hit, and y'all have heard these stories before, but I want to look at these stories kind of with fresh eyes in the view of the culture that Jesus was in. And the first one is, of course, we've heard 10,000 sermons on it. It's a woman with the issue of blood. And you'll find that in both Luke chapter 8, and you'll also find that same story in Mark chapter 5. Just to summarize, Jesus is on his way around the Sea of Galilee because Jairus, who was a synagogue ruler, so he's high up in Jewish society to be a synagogue ruler in that area. And he had sent and asked Jesus to come and heal his 12-year-old daughter. And so Jesus says yes, as he's walking around the Sea of Galilee to get to Jairus' house to lay hands on his daughter. Now, Galilee, and I didn't know this at the time, was a center of healing. It was known because it had 5 hot springs that there were little buildings built around these hot springs that people that wanted healing would go in these little buildings and, soak themselves in the hot springs. It's just like Warren Springs, Georgia was once known for. That's why, President Roosevelt was there in Warm Springs, is because he was taking advantage with his polio condition of those therapeutic pools. And it's no different here. People would flock to these areas in Galilee for the therapeutic pools that were there. And on the way, as he went to heal Jairus' daughter, this woman that was unclean went through the crowds and pushed her way through to see Jesus. And I'm going to read starting in 43 and Luke 8. And it says, now a woman having a flow of blood for 12 years. 12 years. Notice this woman has had this flow of blood for as long as Jairus' daughter had been alive. We have significant number here, 12. 12 is the number of governmental authority. Governmental authority. He's going to demonstrate governmental authority through two females. Two females. It also can also mean perfection and completion, just like the number 7. But 12 years for both of these people. Well, one's 12 years old, one has had a flow of blood for 12 years. And it says, who has spent all her livelihood on physicians and could not be healed by any. So, Jairus, being a synagogue ruler, high up in society, he's got money. This woman with the issue of blood has nothing. She's broke because physicians have taken all her money. Now, I got to tell you, under the law at the time, if blood or pus came from your body, excuse me for getting nasty here, but this is what the law says, you were considered unclean. So you think about the amount of time women were considered unclean under the law. At least 7 days out of every month, a woman was unclean. Any place where you sat or stood would become unclean. If somebody else came in contact where you had been, they were unclean. Women probably socially ostracized because this woman has not stopped bleeding for 12 years. And nobody wants to be around her. You figure she's probably not even able to live with family. She's isolated by herself because if her family was around in the room with her, they would be unclean. So this woman had no one. And let me tell you about these physicians, because this is crazy. Don't think about physicians now. The main form of healing back in these days was bloodletting. Irony, huh? Bloodletting. A cut would be made on the body, then a piece of burning material was placed in a little cup, turned upside down, and placed on the wound that they had cut. And as it cooled, it would create a suction to draw blood out. So the physicians weren't even physically touching her. Somebody would cut this woman, do this cup thing, and draw blood out of her. Real helpful. So not only is this woman bleeding like she's having... So she's only bleeding from a constant period for 12 years. She's got cuts all over her, and it's been bled from that. So she was a mess, and the physicians had taken everything from her. You know, nobody would want to be near this woman. But this woman heard about Jesus. Now, can you put yourself in her shoes? This woman's desperate. By then, after 12 years of this nonsense, I don't think she cared who she had to push out of the way to get to Jesus. She did not care. And he has a huge crowd around him right now, and I can see her now. Let me through. This man is my only hope. I don't care if you get unclean. Move out of my way. I mean, I can picture that. And it goes on to say, then verse 44, she came from behind and touched the border of his garment, and immediately her flow of blood stopped. So she pressed through the crowd to touch the hem of his garment. That's the tassels. And I won't go into all the details of that tonight. That's a whole nother teaching. But those tassels that were on the border of his garment that represented holiness. Talits. Yeah, talits. Yeah. Now, only family members were allowed to touch the tassels. So, I mean, maybe by then she's down on her hands and knees, crawling to get to him. This woman don't care. She says, this man can heal me. And she goes behind him, and Jesus said because of her great faith, she was healed. Because remember, Jesus like, who touched me? And the disciples are like, are you cray-cray? All these people are around you. They're all jostling you. They're all touching you. They're all bumping you. And you say, who touched me? But Jesus, all she touched of him, she didn't touch his physical person. She touched the talith, the tassels. And yet he said, who touched me? Because he felt the power of the Holy Spirit coming out of him to heal her. The thing about that, she didn't even touch him physically, but he felt the power flow out. The Son of God couldn't be made unclean, but the woman was made clean. And I want you to look at this. Jesus said in verse 46, somebody touched me, for I perceive power going from me. Now when the woman saw that she was not hidden, she came trembling and falling down before him. She declared to him in the presence of all the people the reason she had touched him and how she was healed immediately. And he said to her, daughter, underline that word. Bingo. Only family could touch those talith on his garment. And Jesus turns around and calls her family. Family. Would a rabbi of his day done that? No. I had her hauled off, kicking and screaming. Yeah, may have stoned her. Exactly. But he turns around and says, daughter. Daughter. How audacious was Jesus in the face of his cultural situation. Turned around and said, now you're family. Now you're family. I mean, and he said, be of good cheer. Your faith has made you well. Go in peace. I mean, I'd never seen that until I started studying that. And that Jesus turned around and says, you're family now. You're my family. You belong to me. Wow. Now, while he was still speaking, someone came from the ruler of the synagogue's house saying to him, your daughter is dead. Do not trouble the teacher. Like, he couldn't do anything about it now. She's dead, it's over with. It's done. It's gone, And of course, Jesus heard it and answered him saying, do not be afraid, only believe and she will be made well. And we know the story. He went into the house, laid his hands on her, little girl arose, and she came back from the dead. So you have two females here. One touched his tassel and was made clean. The other, he laid hands on her and she was risen from the dead on the spot. So, it's a twofer. You like to go to Publix and get them twofers? We got a twofer here. 12, demonstrating his governmental authority over every sickness, even the most impossible looking sickness, and the most impossible looking thing, death. And he demonstrated his governmental authority in one day over both sickness and death. Okay, now I'm going back to a story that when I first was putting this together last year, I was just drawn to it. I couldn't get away from this woman, Mary Magdalene. I couldn't get away from her. We're going to talk about some things tonight. Now, just to give you some background on this woman, she was from the town of Magdala, which was a fishing town on the Sea of Galilee. Now, this woman has been falsely portrayed as a prostitute, starting in the 6th century A.D. when Pope Gregory decided that she was a prostitute. And that's been handed down as religious tradition with no biblical proof ever since then. Okay, but it does say in Luke chapter 8, same chapter, just at the top, starting in verse 1, that she did have 7 demons cast out of her. We still have controversy today on what demonization and demonic possession and demonic influence looks like in our society. But I can tell you how it manifests in the New Testament and how it still manifests many times today. It manifests many times as serious physical sicknesses. It can manifest as all types of mental illnesses. It can manifest in schizophrenic behaviors. Now, not all sicknesses and mental illnesses, and not even all schizophrenia has anything to do with demons. I worked with a guy for years that was schizophrenic. He did his job. He was quiet. He stayed in the background. He mumbled to his extra people all day long. He looked at the ground. He wouldn't make eye contact with you. But I never felt any woo-woos out of him. And then near the end, before he retired from his job, we could all tell something had happened because he started looking out at you. He started making eye contact with us. He started having little conversations with you, being polite. And I said to my coworkers, somebody switched his meds and they got him on something good. But not all. So when we talk about these things, we want to say all schizophrenia is demon possession, all mental illness is demon possession. And we have churches even among our midst that want to call every little thing that they don't like about somebody else a demon. And that's not the purpose of Jesus casting out demons. He went hand in hand, casting out demons and healing the sick. And so I have a feeling Mary Magdalene had the mental illness side. Now that's just conjecture, but I think she had the mental illness side with some demonic components because she did have 7 demons cast out of her. And there's an interesting word that's used here. Let me go ahead and read in verse 1 of chapter 8. And it says, now it came to pass afterwards that he went through every city and village, preaching and bringing glad tidings of the kingdom of God, and the 12 were with him, and certain women who had been healed of evil spirits and infirmities, Mary called Magdalene, out of whom had came 7 demons, and Joanna the wife of Chusa, Herod's steward, and Susanna, and many others who provided for him out of their substance. So Jesus not only had the 12 disciples following him around, he had a groupie group of women following him everywhere, and included in these women is Mary Magdalene, who had been, watch the word, healed of 7 demons. Healed. This is the word, therapeuo. It means to cure. It means to heal. It means to relieve. It's the root word from which we get therapy and therapeutic. Let's look at some more uses of it. Luke 8:36. We'll find the same word used. This is talking about the demoniac that had legion in him. I won't read the whole passage, but I just want you to see the root word. And it says in 36, they also who had seen it told them by what means he had been demon-possessed was healed. There's the word again, healed. Therapeutic, therapy. One more, Matthew 12:22. Matthew 12:22. And it says, then one was brought to him who was demon-possessed, blind and mute. And he healed him, same word, healed him, so that the blind and mute man both spoke and saw. So at least 3 times we see the word linked with the demonic deliverance. We see it used as healed, healed, healed. So mental healing, physical healing linked with casting out of demons, but the word uses the word healed. Healed. Yeah. And I say that because, both back in those days, people controlled by evil spirits many times were known to have bouts of insanity, and strange behaviors. They were treated with a mix of fear and pity during that time. A lot of times they also, like the woman with the issue of blood, would have been isolated because nobody would know how to handle these people. So there's got to be a lot of shame, again, associated with this and ostracized by society. And my question to you is, what about today? What are our attitudes toward those with mental illnesses or demonic influences or both that come in our midst? Be honest. What's your first reaction?
You don't always Yeah. Scary. You want to be professional. Sometimes you can say, protect yourself. Protect. Yeah. I would say guarded empathy. Yeah. That's a good word. Yeah. Especially if it's paranoid. You'd be scared. Yeah. 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 What about those that have other
types of demonic influences that are not necessarily demon possession, but, they could be demonized with, controlling type spirits and, things that just really push at you, almost witchcraft thingies. What's your reaction? Well, I know my gut reaction is get away, get out, go, hit the road, Jack. We don't want you. That's my gut reaction. Yeah, put them out. Ostracize them.
Guys in jail demonized. They want to disrupt the class. Mm-hmm. Begin to speak the name of Jesus. Some of them try and run out of the room, but it's locked. Yep. Some start pacing the window back and forth like a cage in. Mm-hmm. But eventually, security guard notices it and lets them out. Yeah. There's been a time or two where I cast the demons out. Yep. And it's really amazing when you see it happen. Oh, yeah. And other people were like shocked. Like other men were shocked because they lived with this guy in the dorm. And he went back into the dorm completely different. Completely healed. Yeah, I've seen some very, very extreme dramatic deliverances also like that. Greg Cleveland was with me, and he was like, I didn't know what you were doing, I don't weigh much of that, but I just went with it and wow. What? Yeah.
Yeah. We worked way back when I was at
Liberty Church. We had a little 90-pound soaking wet gal that had purposely, she had suffered from a lot of rejection and who knows what else in her life, and she purposely invited demons into her, knowingly, because she was lonely and wanted friends. Yeah, she started cutting herself, burning herself, all that stuff. And she finally came to us and said, I need help. And the singles pastor, who was an ex-Marine, felt like a rock. And me, I was in there just as an intercessor, and another gal very experienced in deliverance. We were locked in with that girl in the sanctuary for 3 hours in every manifestation that you could think of. And afterwards, she was so befuddled at her normalcy, she would come and knock on my room at night. I was still living in the dorm at the time and say, Mary, I'm experiencing so-and-so. Is this normal? Bless her heart. Yeah, because she didn't know what normal was anymore. Yeah, she went on, got married, had children, but I mean, yeah, there's been some dramatic things, and we've all, we've been around long enough, we've seen dramatic things happen. But, I know my reaction to certain types is like, get out of here. Yeah, whoa, go on. Schizophrenia is one that's hard to handle, even though it may be all chemical. I was a Mary Magdalene. Now, I didn't have demons as such, but I had bipolar depression. Came from both sides of my family very strongly. I didn't get diagnosed properly until my early 30s, but I suffered with it from the time I was a teenager. And I had some bizarre behaviors. Poor Alex and Jill, they didn't know what to do with me. Yeah, they just loved me. But I mean, I had some especially when I was on the manic side, I had some stupid, bizarre behaviors, just idiotic stuff, and when I was depressed, I was suicidal. I should have been locked up, frankly. But, and I was on some heavy duty meds for it for decades. That all it did was just numb me out to where I didn't feel anything, and then I'd still hit the depressions and I'd still hit the stuff. And well, to make a very, very long story short, God sovereignly healed me. Sovereignly, and that's been I counted it up the other day, it was been 22 years. It was like 9 days. Yeah, she saw it, yeah. Were you saved before you got to? Oh, yeah, way. I was saved and spirit-filled. Oh, let me tell you a story. One day, we were at Courts of Praise, and had us just one of the blowout praise and worship times, and pastor gave an altar call, and here comes all these people. I'm up on the stage playing clarinet, and they're all going over to my side. So I said, well, I'm in a pit, okay, but somebody's got to pray for these people. So I went out there, I'm a tongue-talking, spirit-filled, moving into gifts person. And I started laying hands on these people. These people were getting healed. They were falling out in the spirit. They were going down. They were coming up rejoicing. And after the service was over, I was angry. I was so angry. I said, God, I'm just a water hose. And nothing's touching me. Why do you use me to touch all these people and you don't heal me? And I went home angry at God because he wouldn't heal me. So yeah, I was a spirit-filled, tongue-talking Christian and had been for years, a Bible school graduate, the whole 9 yards.
Anger with God that you did. Oh gosh, I don't know. No, that was
before. Oh, I was after I came here. Yeah. that I got healed during ADT class. I mean, I wasn't looking for it, folks. I mean, I had given up and just said, okay, I'm just resigned to being a nut. This is what it is. I'm just going to have to cope with it the rest of my life. And shortly after that, he absolutely sovereignly healed me to the point where I threw out the meds, and that was the end of it. And that's been 22 years. So yeah, whether that was deliverance also may have been. There's probably the deliverance component to it because it was like that. But nobody laid hands on me. Everybody given up laying hands on me. Bless it. But God set me free. Set me free. So, was there hope for Mary Magdalene? Absolutely. There's hopes for all the Mary Magdalenes in our lives. It's just that we have to see these people through the eyes of the compassion of the Holy Spirit, which I do not always, even having been one, I do not always do. There's certain ones that I just don't tolerate well. When I see people hurting other people, I don't tolerate that too well, but Jesus in me can show me how to do that. So, let's talk some more about Mary Magdalene. Mary Magdalene, after she was healed, she was next to Jesus like glue. I mean, followed him and the disciples everywhere. John 19. Let's look at that. If anybody wants to talk or share, please do. This isn't the Mary Graham show. Mary Magdalene is one of the handful of people that follows Jesus all the way to the cross. All the way to the cross. Now there stood by the cross of Jesus in verse 25, his mother's sister, Mary the wife of Clopas, and our Mary Magdalene right there. Our Mary Magdalene. And John the disciple. All the other ones, even those other 11 brave disciples, including Peter, who was going to stand up with them to the end, yeah, gone. Hiding away. Okay, let's look at John 20. Mary Magdalene comes to the tomb twice on resurrection morning. Not once, but twice. She comes with others to anoint Jesus' body. Now, this had already been done by Joseph of Arimathea in John 19. I have got to read you all this. I saved this on my Facebook a couple of years ago. I've got to read this to you because it's just, I feel like this is where Mary Magdalene was too. That's why I saved it. It says, this is about Joseph of Arimathea, and I think this reflects Mary also. It says, Joseph of Arimathea took down a corpse, hands still sticky with blood, skin already cold, touched death, held it, wrapped it, became ceremonially unclean for Passover for a dead man. Here's what most Christians miss about the burial of Jesus. Joseph was a wealthy man, a member of the Sanhedrin, a respected Jew, and Passover was 3 hours away, the holiest day of the year. But he climbed Golgotha anyway. Jewish law was clear. Touch a dead body, you're unclean for 7 days. Can't worship, can't celebrate, can't enter the temple. Joseph knew this. He'd spent his entire life following these laws. But Jesus was still hanging on that cross. Picture it. The crowds are gone, the soldiers drunk, the women weeping. Joseph approaches Pilate, the man who had just murdered his Lord, and asks permission. Can I have the body? Pilate grants it. Now, Joseph actually had to do it. He walks to Golgotha, blood-soaked dirt, the smell of death, 3 crosses against the sky, Jesus in the middle, still, finally still. Joseph climbs the ladder, grabs the first nail, pulls, feels the weight of that moment, God's body in your arms. The blood isn't dry yet. It stains his expensive robes, his hands, under his fingernails. He can taste the iron in the air. This is what obedience looks like. Messy, expensive, permanent. Nicodemus shows up, another secret disciple, another Sanhedrin member. He brings, get this, 75 pounds of myrrh and aloes. That's about $150,000 worth of burial spices in today's money. You think burials today are expensive? 2 wealthy men, 2 cowards until now. Finally brave when it's already too late. They work fast. Sabbath is coming. They have maybe 3 hours. Wrap the body, pour the spices, seal the tomb. The sun is setting. Joseph is now officially unclean. Can't celebrate Passover tomorrow. Can't enter the temple for a week. Think about what he just gave up. His ceremonial purity, his Passover celebration, his reputation. Everyone saw him bury a blasphemer. His position, the Sanhedrin won't forget this. His safety, Romans might come for the disciples next. All for a dead man. But here's what most Christians miss. Joseph didn't do this expecting resurrection. He did it expecting nothing. Jesus was dead, gone, finished. This wasn't faith in resurrection. This was love for a corpse. That's the part that wrecks me. Joseph touched death, literally, knowing it meant giving up everything. Not because Jesus promised him anything, but because Jesus deserved honor even in death. Modern Christianity wants clean obedience, safe obedience, obedience that doesn't cost you Passover. But Joseph shows us something different. True discipleship gets your hands dirty. You want to follow Jesus? Then stop avoiding the messy parts, like the Mary Magdalenes in our lives. Help me, Jesus. Stop waiting for clean opportunities. Stop demanding that obedience be convenient. Joseph climbed Golgotha when everyone else went home. He wrapped the corpse when he could have stayed clean. He missed the holiest day of his life to honor a dead criminal. He risked everything when there was no visible reward. That's not religion. That's worship. The twist? 3 days later, that tomb was empty. Joseph gave his grave to Jesus. Jesus left it empty forever. Joseph thought he was burying God. He was actually setting the stage for resurrection. Your messy obedience? God's using it too, even when you can't see it. So here's the question. What are you avoiding because it's too messy? What obedience are you postponing because it's inconvenient? What grave are you unwilling to give? Joseph of Arimathea held death in his arms, got blood on his hands, missed Passover, lost his reputation, and earned his name in all 4 Gospels. Religion says stay clean. Discipleship says get dirty. Joseph chose discipleship. What are you choosing? And I think that's where Mary Magdalene was. She went once to the tomb, found it empty with the women. She also had myrrh and aloe and spices with her. She too was going to go anoint a corpse. She too, and those women in that act weren't expecting an empty tomb. They were expecting to find a dead body to finish anointing. But she went, just like Joseph did, to honor Jesus the only way that she could, the only way that she thought she could, and that's to put some more stuff on them. Yeah, to put some more stuff on them. So here's Mary. They run to the tomb. What? Where is he? They run back. The tomb's empty. Then the rest of the women stay back, but Mary Magdalene runs all the way back to the tomb. She's going to look for this body. By doggone, they killed Jesus. They took him away from her. But by doggone, she's going to get that body and put it back where it belongs and take care of it and honor it like it should be honored. Jesus is her whole life and whole reason for existence. And here he has been taken away from her. And can you imagine how this woman felt? Utterly bereft, utterly grieved, utter loss of purpose, utter loss of direction, confused, maybe angry. All those mix of emotions has got to be rolling around in her. Abandoned in death by the one person that she could fully trust. But all she had left was some spices. Well, at least I can get the body back in the tomb and anoint it and make sure it's sealed up properly. So here she goes, running back to the scene of the crime, she thought, and she runs into this guy that she thought was the gardener. Now, she's crying and weeping, and in my mind, I'm wondering if she's just got her head down to the ground when she's encountered. And the gardener says, well, who are you looking for? And she said, would you just tell me where you put him? Now, she's, of course, in her grief, she's not making any sense. No one man has gone to pick up this heavy corpse that weighs the body plus 75 pounds of other stuff, and the cloth all wrapped up. He hasn't picked up this body and hauled it anywhere. But she's not thinking in her grief. She's blinded to who she's talking to. And Joanna did a great job yesterday talking about eyes being blinded by different things. And her eyes were blinded. Our eyes can get blinded by so many things to what's standing right in front of us. By grief, by anger, by shame, by guilt, by feelings of rejection, by just, you name it. We can be blinded to what's in front of us. And Mary Magdalene, in all those emotions that she was feeling, is blinded to the fact because she couldn't wrap her head around it that this could even possibly be the risen Son of God. Because in the natural, there's no way. He's dead. He's gone. My life is over. I might as well go back to whatever I was before. My life's over with. So here she is talking to this man that she thinks is the gardener and not recognizing that he's the very Son of God risen from the dead. How many times have I or any of you not recognized what's standing right in front of us because we had spiritual cataracts on our eyes? This is where Mary Magdalene found herself, I'm convinced. But when he spoke her name, I may not be able to perceive you with my eyes, but I hear your voice. His sheep know his voice. And she went, Rabboni, and grabbed onto him. She's like, oh, no, you're not getting away from me this time, buddy. You ain't going nowhere. But Jesus said, you can't hold on to me, honey. And the reason why is because he hasn't completed the atoning work. He hasn't completed the resurrection work. He had risen from the dead, but he hadn't ascended to heaven to place that blood on the mercy seat and send his Holy Spirit. He had something better than his physical presence to impart to Mary Magdalene and all the other disciples. And he said, you can't hold on to me. I've got something better. I have to complete what I started. I got to finish, complete it by presenting my blood before the Father. And then I'll come and live with you and in you forever and ever and ever. And I will multiply myself in and through you. And then he turns around and says, but go tell the disciples. But go tell the disciples. And a lot of commentators say, and here Mary Magdalene becomes the first apostle. The first apostle. We have the woman at the well, the Samaritan woman, becoming the first evangelist who runs into town and says, come and see, this man that's told everything about me. Come. And they all come pouring out. And now we have Jesus directing Mary Magdalene. She's the first one he spoke to after he rose from the grave. How great an honor is bestowed upon this woman that loved him. Speaking about going from demon possession to the first witness of the resurrection, shame to honor. That's what Jesus is about. Not only in women, but in all of us. Shame to honor. That's what he's about. And he'll break down every social, cultural, and religious norm to get us from one place to the other. He'll break down every wall that's inside of us, mentally, physically, emotionally. He'll break it down to get us from a place of shame to a place of honor. Amen. All right, that's it. And anybody got any questions, comments, add-ons, things you've encountered out there with demons? I'm sure everybody could go tell a story, or 2 or 5 or 17. James.
I love how you said that, her eyes, she was standing right there in front of you, but her eyes could not see him.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so true that many times people see their future, they see their plans, and they're looking at that, and they don't even see who is standing in front of them. And that's the one who makes the plan. He's the one who creates their future, knows their purpose.
Mm-hmm.
That was
Yeah. I mean, a big one for me is, can be worry. Worry, anxiety over this and that and the other, then you get your brain on, well, how am I going to pay this bill? How am I going to make this work? And I've always had that weakness in with the finances, and with thinking about finances. And he just looked at me and said, I remember one time back when we were just broke and he was in between jobs and it seemed like forever and ever. And he looked at me one day and said, are your bills paid this week? Yeah. Do you have food on the table? Yeah. Do you have a roof over your head? Yeah. Shut up, Charles. And during that same period of time, I was actually walking my dogs up the road, and I started mumbling and complaining and worrying again. Oh, I don't have enough money for this. What am I going to do? I'm running out of savings. He's got this stupid temporary $9.50 an hour job that's not paying the bills. What am I going to do? Blah, blah, blah. I wasn't exactly looking at Jesus, but he spoke to me. And he said,
Have you paid your bills? Do you have food on the table? Do you have a roof over your head? I couldn't say, shut up, God. All I could say is he had. I said, yes, Lord. But, you know, he'll get to you one way or the other because we belong to him and his sheep know his voice. So he'll do it. Anything else?
Great passion when he made a point of, showing himself who David. He didn't have to do that. Yeah, yeah, it was an absolute compassionate
Act because he saw her devastation and chose to reveal to himself to her before any other disciple, including John, because the favorite, who was now hiding out with the other disciples. You remember, Peter and John did run to the tomb after Mary Magdalene and them came back and told them he's not there. They both ran to the tomb. Peter ran to the tomb and, but John looked in and John did believe. He believed. Now,
He was the only one at the cross, yeah.
But then he also took Mary as his mother.
Yeah, Mary, the mother of Jesus, as his own mother. Yeah.
But he chose to reveal himself first to Mary Magdalene.
Just talking about you, we all go through stuff. It's not just you. But what they did do, John, Mary Magdalene, what they did do was leave Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what helps us, we don't believe the power of staying
Yeah,
and just being there,
yeah.
not leaving. That's huge.
That's good. Yeah, that's really good. Yeah,
They didn't leave.
yeah. Because sometimes all it takes is just somebody just being there physically. I remember back when my middle stepchild, his
Little son committed suicide, and we found out it was so well. I mean, I was at work. He called me, of course, just falling apart, and I just dropped everything, ran home, and I only lived 5 minutes from the hospital at the time. And by the time I got to the house, there was the two couples that were our best friends at the time, including Connette, they were there in the carport waiting for us. They were there. They didn't say anything. They were just there. They were just there. And that spoke, and I mean, what could you say? That spoke to us louder than any words. Their physical presence while we were in their house trying to grab suitcase, throwing stuff in the car as fast as we could to get to hit the road to Pensacola. And they just stood there with us in the carport. Not a word. Yeah, the physical presence of other people, even when you don't know what to say. I don't know how to minister to some of these serious mentally ill people. One time I was at the hospital and this one old lady was giving one of my nurse friends an absolute fit. And she was in there and demons were actually manifesting through this woman. She was sitting up in the chair. She was slamming drawers open and closing purposely. Trying to tear stuff up purposely, purposeful meanness. And my nurse friend came and said, I don't know what to do with her. I can't do anything with her. And I said, let me go in there. And I went in there, and I recognized her as a demoniac. And I stood there, and I said, in the name of Jesus, you will cease your activities. You will stop it, you will shut up, and you will let this nurse work and do her job. Silence the rest of the day. So, sometimes the Lord will give you what to do in the situations, and other times I'm standing there going, security! So, But the Lord will give it to you when it's your time to deal with it. Oh, yeah, yeah.